Good evening. Welcome to Economics 330, Global Trade and Political Economy, City University of New York, MAC. My name is Professor O. Felix Obi, and today, of course, is Tuesday, April 8, 2025, and we will now begin the formal lecture portion of today's office hour and lecture. This is, of course, week 11 and module 11. And in today's lecture, we will discuss the role of multinational corporations, or MNCs, in international trade relations. This topic is important, not the least because MNCs are responsible for a significant portion of goods that are involved in world trade. In today's lecture, and indeed through your assessment for this week, we will discuss some of the pros and cons of multinational corporations, criticisms and praise of multinational corporations. In particular, we will discuss multinational corporations in the context of international political economy theories and perspectives. As such, the learning objectives for this week would mean that upon the conclusion of this module, you should be able to explain the following. First, identify multinational corporations. A multinational corporation, or MNC, is a company that has business operations in at least one country other than its home country. By some definitions, multinational corporations, or MNCs, also generate at least 25% of its revenue outside of its home country. Notably, some MNCs, which again is multinational corporations, may have budgets that exceed those of small countries. Many MNCs are based in developed nations, but they can have a positive economic effect on countries in which it operates, especially as multinational companies can make direct investments in foreign countries. Advocates say multinational corporations create high-paying jobs and technologically advanced goods in countries that otherwise will not have access to such opportunities or goods. The second learning objective for the week is to explain why multinational corporations are criticized for playing deleterious roles in host countries. Critics of these enterprises believe that multinational corporations exert undue political influence over governments. They exploit developing nations and create job losses in their own home countries. Indeed, you could see and hear some of this argument echoed today in our television and radio stations as talking heads and economists debate the Trump administration's tariffs. Part of the argument is that the United States has shed manufacturing jobs, and President Trump has expressed that he would like to bring those jobs back to the United States. This is, of course, separate from the fact whether tariffs are the best approach to achieve that policy objective. But the broader argument is that our multinational corporations have moved these manufacturing capacities to other countries and away from the United States, presumably because of weaker regulations and lower cost of production. So the argument, therefore, is that multinational corporations can create job losses in their own home country when they export this manufacturing capacity to developing countries. And that because when multinational corporations export these jobs and manufacturing capacity to developing countries, they become the dominant economic force in those countries, and therefore are able to coerce the government and bend the government to its will, because they become the single biggest employer quite often, and also quite often the largest taxpayer. The history of MNCs is linked with the history of colonialism, interestingly. Many of the first multinational companies were commissioned at the behest of European monarchs to conduct international expeditions. These earlier MNCs include, among others, the East India Company, established in 1600. The British multinational enterprise took part in international trade and exploration and operated trading posts in India. The Swedish African Company, founded in 1649, the Hudson Bay Company, founded in 1670, and the Royal Niger Company, a mercantile company chartered by the British government in 1879 as the United African Company, or UAC, and renamed National African Company in 1881 and to Royal Niger Company in 1886. The second learning objective is to discuss the role that multinational corporations play in the transfer of technology and trade in the world. Multinational corporations obviously play a crucial role in the transfer of technology and trade in the world. By producing the same quality of goods at lower cost, multinational companies can reduce prices and increase the purchasing power of consumers worldwide. So let's unpack this very quickly. So as we know, I don't know why New Balance comes to mind, but let's say the New Balance sneakers. They traditionally were made, I believe, in somewhere in New England. And some of the higher end sneakers are still manufactured around the original plant in New England. However, New Balance has moved some of this production capacity overseas. And it does not appear that quality has taken much of a hit, if any, as a result. However, the prices of the sneakers, if not the profit margins of New Balance, the prices have gone down, and I suspect so has the profit margins of the company. So this will be a classic example of producing the same quality of goods at a lower cost when multinational companies reduce prices and increase the purchasing power of consumers worldwide. And this is really the tension that is at the heart, and to come back to, because as I promised earlier at the beginning of this semester, that I was going to try to not make the class too much of an abstraction and to try to link the class to contemporary events. In saying that, part of the tension in the trade tariffs, ongoing trade tariffs, is that even if some manufacturing of lower end goods and some consumer goods were somehow to be moved to the United States, that those goods will become much more expensive, thereby eroding the purchasing power of the average American consumer. So the question then becomes, would this be the most effective way to create jobs that can lead to inflationary pressures and downward pressure on the purchasing power of many Americans? So that is part of the tension in the debate that you now see play out on national television, in the newspapers, and yes, in the radio as well. So, and I say this as part of also a broader point that I raised earlier on in the semester, where I said that there are some phrases that are critical for you to employ the meaning of those phrases in your understanding of international political economy. I also suggested that Using those phrases as part of your vocabulary also has a signaling effect to your audience. It signals a level of technical expertise and an understanding of the subject matter. And one of these is dialectical thinking, which, of course, is that you don't truly understand an issue until you understand all sides of that issue. And that's a quick example of that is the argument that we need to bring back more manufacturing jobs to the United States, which obviously, on the one hand, if that were able to happen, there will be a positive impact on employment. However, that might come at the expense of expensive products, goods, and services. And the question then is the inflationary pressure worth those jobs? The inflationary pressure and the reduced purchasing power that will come as a result of expensive goods, would they be worth those jobs created, or would the country be better off getting into a zero tariff, ideally a zero tariff trade agreement where comparative advantage determines what goods and services are manufactured where? So it's just that's one of those great debates. So as I said, on the other side of the ledger, there is a trade-off in globalization. The price of lower prices is that domestic jobs will move overseas. Some domestic jobs will move overseas. That is just a flat out truth. That is a trade-off in globalization. So if you want cheap, fast fashion from Temu, you cannot achieve that if you're going to make those products in Indiana. That's really the truth. You cannot achieve those prices if you're going to rent a store on Atlantic Avenue or Flatbush Avenue because it's expensive, much less going down into Manhattan, going down to 14th Street or 23rd Street. It just becomes to 34th Street. Or 14th Street for that matter. It just becomes too expensive. So that is the trade-off. The trade-off of globalization is that the price of lower prices is that some domestic jobs will move overseas. This can increase unemployment in the home country of multinational corporations and make it difficult for long-term employees in outsourced industries to find new jobs. Learning outcomes. Upon the end of this week, you should be able to A, differentiate between foreign direct investment control and portfolio investment no control. Foreign direct investment control implies investment by foreign investors directly into the productive assets of another country, while portfolio investment no control means investing in financial assets such as stocks and bonds of entities located in another country. Let me repeat that. Foreign direct investment control implies investment by foreign investors directly into the productive assets of another country, such as building a factory, building a plant, building a hotel, as an example. While portfolio investment, no control, means investing in financial assets such as stocks and bonds of entities located in another country. 2, note that major decisions that a multinational corporation should consider regarding how it selects and operates in a specific location includes, among others, opportunity for improved efficiencies, lower production cost, and eventual larger market share, all things being equal. Another significant strategy of multinational corporations is transfer pricing. This is when corporate tax rates differ among countries. MNCs have an incentive to set its transfer prices in a way that reduces its tax burden by reporting higher profits in the country where corporate profits are taxed more lightly. One good example is Ireland. the country of Republic of Ireland, not the Northern Ireland province of the United Kingdom. The Republic of Ireland has many high-tech American companies, Google and the like, domiciled in the Republic of Ireland. And part of the strategy behind that is that when they recognize profits in Ireland, they pay relatively cheaper corporate tax in Ireland than they would have in most other European countries. 4, differentiates the perspectives of liberals, realists, and historical materialists about multinational corporations. And 5, lastly, note the difference between horizontal and vertical integration. Horizontal integration for a multinational corporation, of course, is when a business grows by acquiring a similar company in their industry at the same point in the supply chain. So that if CVS buys Walgreens, that is horizontal integration because it is a similar company in the industry at the same point in the supply chain. Whereas vertical integration is when a business expands by acquiring another company that operates before or after them in the supply chain. So if CVS were to buy a drug manufacturer, that would be a vertical integration because at this point it is buying a company that is further up the value chain than it, a company that makes some of the therapies that CVS will now sell in its shops. So that will be vertical integration. So in summary, I wish you a successful completion of week 11. I hope you are continuing to work on your term paper and term project, even as you work on the week's assessment. Most especially, I wish you a safe, relaxing, and enjoyable spring break. And when you come back refreshed and ready to pick back up, we will begin with international economic development. And with that, I'm going to end the formal lecture part of today's office hour and lecture and take any questions as appropriate.